Good evening, everyone. Let's head into Collectively Rewilding. All right, here we are in Collectively Rewilding. Oh, I forgot to pin this account. Let's head on in again. And here we are in the newly designed Mighty Networks format for Collectively Rewilding. I love this green color over here. I think that it's so pretty. Oh my goodness. The rest of it, it's a little bit much to work with. So if any of you are trying to leave comments at any point in any of the communities that we participate in, and it won't let you get down to the button, if you put in a decent amount of text, let me get some longer text here and show you what I mean if I have any. I don't anymore, but once you get to a certain amount of text, this button sometimes disappears for reply, or sometimes it stays where it's supposed to. All you have to do if you're on a computer or laptop is hit your control button and then use the scroll bar to scroll down until it's small enough where you will see that reply button. Once you start typing it, comment, reply. Oh my goodness, they change these things so often. I really would like to see some of the changes slow down a little bit and let everybody get accustomed to them. Oh goodness, so now 80 really does work better. Okay, there we go. Yes, that's much more visually balanced. All right, so with all of these changes, we'll be doing some changing here in Collectively Rewilding. And I had meant to go and take a quick peek at the little videos that Miss Julia left us for Collectively Rewilding. Oh, right over here, I've changed it all. And I didn't end up having time. So let's just check really quickly to see if these Loom videos, whoa, wait, nope, that was a meeting. That's why it's being weird. Okay, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. And it does have a summary. Nice, okay. Do we have a full transcript? Excellent, okay. I think she talked about some of the titling in here. So we'll be doing something a little bit different with the overall image for Collectively Rewilding. This image right here, it doesn't show up very well. It's too small. You can't really tell what it says. I absolutely agree with her, as I almost always do. And so she's going to play with the capital C and the capital R out of Collectively Rewilding. I already call a lot of things CR, like CR's Mix. I'm aware this is a relatively long name, and I wanted to work that into the branding earlier rather than later. So moving into a larger visually something that you can actually see, right? So you can possibly, depending on your device, of course, when you have phones and things like that, it gets even smaller. And no matter what you do, sometimes you can't see things that small on a phone. However, on a computer or a laptop, instead of having this very tiny writing that you really can't see in any way to know what it is unless you absolutely know what it says. And even then, you can kind of see rewild. So it's not a very descriptive image for our community. And she will take those two capital letters that have that style of font, right, and make that into a new image. We also discussed footprints. I feel like footprints and a butterfly would at least be needed if we went that way. That's another thing that could happen in the future, right? You want to throw some newness into things occasionally if you aren't constantly changing. Right now, we are going to be doing enough changing that, of course, we'll just keep that logo for a little while, for sure, until everything is kind of more established with the way that we're going. All right, and then let's see. she talks about a lot of things that are kind of bigger, but there are some areas that we can all kind of talk about, different ways that we like, what we think would be, and it might be in another area. So let's just get out of here and not worry about that. But what she talked about was retitling areas, that these areas should be visible as Collectively Rewilding is within a reasonable menu, which would be more towards about here, right? So we're going to be trying to get these down. I think that, I wonder how I could display it at the size that Collective or that Mighty Networks initially sets it up as. I think it translates across. So let's make it really big so I can see if I go to another tab, what it looks like. Interesting. So it's tab to tab how it shows it there. And this is probably more along the lines what it normally looks like. So I'm not sure how we'll rebrand everything, and that's really where I've been in my head, trying to figure out how we might approach changing up the titles more towards things like where member meetups actually fits in that line, getting rid of the quick draw editing services at all and rebranding that entirely, taking it to 4 or 5 state regions instead of, I think, 7, right? Yeah, 7 currently. And so doing all of these different things to make it a lot more visually appealing, visually approachable, more clearly descriptive, a bunch of different things. We may or may not be able to keep the exact color scheme for Tea and Talk with Tammy. These are colors I really associate with Tammy. She's just so bright and upbeat all of the time that yellow and pink bright colors seem to me to fit her so well. I do have yellow already in the CR colors, the Collectively Rewilding colors. Not so much pink, though that certainly fits in a palette for anything talking about Collectively Rewilding, gardening, outdoors. There's definitely a lot of different variety within color that could be played with there. So sorry about that. Let me get this off of here. All right. And those are some of the things that we're playing with in the background for everything that's going on here. We have it pretty well. How do I want to put this? We have it pretty well minimized as far as overall collections. There could even be another collection or two added without that being a big problem. It's more about the overall titling. That's going to be a big, big focus, as well as within each of the courses that we have. So jump into sustainable organic soil regeneration as an example. Instead of having all of these different types of thumbnails, they will be more aligned and very much a similar look for each item. I'm not sure exactly what we'll do, as these aren't steps or anything like that. They're classes. Maybe within the classes there will have a specific thumbnail for that, and then perhaps the other pieces having different thumbnails for each unit. So these are all the different things that we're talking about to decide what we want the end results for Collectively Rewilding to look like, right? All right. So not a whole lot going on in the garden. There's a lot of growth from a lot of weeds. The plants that are going to be able to establish with the quality of soil that are there are big enough that I've been able to start weaning them off of water in a less dry time, in a less dry area. I could water them much more sporadically probably already. However, here with the heat of June, I guess we were at 100 degrees yesterday. It certainly did not feel like it to me, but that's what the temperatures were reading, I've been told. So we already have hit 100 degrees, which is unfortunate. I would have rather seen that towards July. Hopefully we don't see any more weather like that until at least July or August. I don't know how the temperatures are across the country. I usually pay more attention, but I've just been so crazy busy with everything that's going on that I haven't been able to pay attention to any of the weather out there. So I hope you guys are staying cool, having fun, getting out there in the sun, doing tons of great gardening or exploring, hiking, going out to the parks and picnicking. Jay's going to go out tomorrow actually to a park and go disc golfing, which I'm really excited for because he hasn't been able to do that since well before our move, probably approaching around a year since he's really been able to do any disc golf. And that's all what we're about, going out there and feeling the sun, getting some sort of nature around you, even if it is the more manicured type like a park, is absolutely what we all want to be out there doing, right? Here, the weeds have definitely started the process of getting into the soil. They haven't completely gotten through to all the areas that we've put the mulch down on. That's how bad the soil was, that there were still patches within all of the different areas that have been mulched and watered, that have had seeds put down. As I mentioned in, I think maybe Monday's class or last Thursday, we've seen the seedlings come up and then they never mature beyond, maybe a quarter of an inch or a little taller. And then there's just another layer of new seedlings. They're starting and they're not finding the soil conditions to be nutritive enough, open enough. Maybe it's too compact. There's a lot of different things that could be going on with these seedlings. However, that's a part of the process. Each of those seedlings that starts and then dies off will leave all of its nutrients. They're very soft plants. They'll deteriorate and become more readily available to the other plants going forward relatively quickly. The weeds were almost non-existent in the backyard last year. This year, they are all over everything. And if we really just wanted to have greenery back there, something that felt a little bit like a lawn that we wanted to continually bomb with grass seed, we would be there already. We would keep working on it. The patches, we would maybe actually go in and do some manual breaking up of that tight soil, mulching it again, and putting grass seed on it and things like that. However, that's not our goal. So we're going to let the weeds continue to do their magic along with any of the seeds that we're able to take and grow larger. Hopefully those that have gotten, even up to 2 and 3 inches in the better soil, the better sheltered areas, these types of places, they hopefully will continue on. It's still not a guarantee. This is really, really rough soil. That's why we started with very basic plants, wildflowers, cover crops. That's 4 different kinds of clover, daikon radishes maybe. Oh goodness, I can't even remember. There are a lot of very tough types of seeds out there, but that's how badly the soil had been neglected. It was technically dirt in the largest patches. However, we're bringing it back slowly. It's getting more and more of the nutrients breaking down from the wood chips that we put on as mulch. The mushrooms are finding plenty of nutrients because they don't need to go deep into the soil. They're using that stuff that's decomposing in those wood chips, and we have a lot of great mushroom work being done in the soil, and it's really a very valuable part of the process. If you want to wait to really allow your soil to gain the health and not putting in extra resources from outside with topsoil and compost and all of these different things that we've talked about, building raised beds up on top of it and bringing resources in to fill it. If you want your soil to be healthy, this is a very important stage to allow your soil to begin to restructure itself, let those roots from the tougher plants, things like, unfortunately, bindweed is probably my least favorite and also my most favorite. It's a beautifully smelling, very, very invasive and damaging plant to other plants. It will bind them, bindweed. However, it's really good for the soil while we're waiting to be able to put seeds in that can handle not necessarily perfect conditions, but better than what we currently have. This is a part of the natural process. I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Weeds are nature's band-aids. So we're trying to introduce other things already at this earliest stage, And we will add the soil that we have taken from the sunken garden, especially had a lot better topsoil. That's already been spread into the berms wherever we could spread that one out to. It didn't do as much in any kind of way as what the soil over from the Walipini has provided. However, that was decent soil too. It had just kind of been left alone and it had never gotten as compacted. I don't think that there was as much brought in over there. It was more towards the natural soil when they put this property in 20 or so years ago. So that was some decent soil as well. Not great, but decent. And so that's what we'll use along with, yes, a little bit of compost and things like that mixed in here and there throughout, a very small component compared to what we're going to do with the actual garden soil. Then once we get those berms completely covered with the sprinkler systems in them, as well as the Hugel Kultur material, we'll put a final wood chip layer on them and they will be able to retain water the way they're designed. They do not retain water nearly as well as they should when they're open-faced or dry dirt exposed. However, we have to do it in stages. We weren't quite ready for this stage, but we could get the holes dug when we wouldn't have been able to do that by ourselves at the time that would have been what we had intended. Not because of any specific thing, just thinking that the timing was going to fall more towards, well, the fall. And so we didn't have our sprinkler material or anything like that ready. And so waiting for that as we get closer towards the fall, when we will go back out, add that second layer of garden soil over the sprinkler lines. Then next spring, hopefully I've gotten some wood chip drops. If not, we've gotten so much of the wood chips out over the biggest area of the essentially dead soil that was out there that we can cover the cost of buying the less manicured, no dyes, no rubber mulches, any of that yuck, but just some basic pine bark mulch that will cover all of the berms, the swale over here that runs to the north and south that we haven't really touched at all because it's so close to that dirt mound. The bund still needs to be mulched. And we want to add both our compost heap next spring to our front yard. It had just been so damaged and depleted when the previous owners were getting this house ready to sell. They were watering the grass 3 times a day, and that washed all the nutrients out and it compacted the soil just horribly. So I'm not going to overwater. I just do not believe in overwatering a yard. I just refuse to do it. We have a manual aerator coming, one of the rolling bar sort, on Monday. That's going to be one step. We've already been adding some broken down seaweed material, the seaweed wraps. You have to get raw, unsalted seaweed wrap, and then you can just take a sheet of it and put it into water and let it break down. Then put 1 sheet's worth of mix into about a gallon of water that you spread out all over wherever you're wanting to add a little bit more readily broken down nutrients to any soil that you're working with, to your potted plants, anything like that. It was a recommendation from M.I. Gardner that I just loved, and I've been applying now. I think I've done 3 rounds on the front yard. I'm going to stop that with a while, wait till we get the aerator, go over that, water it, then put down some more of the seaweed treatment, I guess, would be a good way to label it. And then let it kind of do its thing. I don't want to over water or I don't even know how you'd say it. I don't want to provide too many of the same sorts of nutrients in too short of a period of time. We'll let that go through, probably do another round in a month or so, and then again another round or so, maybe as many as 2 before the winter hits. Then in the spring, we'll take this entire compost heap that we've been working on, put it into our wheelbarrows, take it out to the front. I want to spread it all over, and we're going to keep adding compost to it, of course. So I'm going to actually use my seed spreader and open it to the largest openings and just lightly scatter that compost all over this horribly depleted front yard that we've been blessed to get to work with. I do love this property so much. It's just an amazing property. And so we'll put that compost out and then lightly scatter deliberately manicured pine bark, the most manicured without getting any kind of paint or any junk like that, dye into it, but it's very, very fine. Smaller than a dime is the diameter of the majority of these pieces, and we want to lightly scatter that over the compost. And then, of course, we'll put some additional seaweed treatments, perhaps some of the other options that are out there, and really try to bring some health back to the front yard. Now I'm going to start putting those seaweed treatments towards the backyard. I will go ahead and throw some on the sunken garden that's already doing so well, but it'll be like the last area. It is so successful with the positioning that it has, great softer daylight. It does have some of the westerly light in the afternoon, but half of it starts getting into the shade, which keeps the whole of it cooler. Of course, the cool air does lower down into that sunken pit. And so the plant life there is very plentiful. It really is the most successful area for variety of wildflowers and cover crops that are coming up there. There's definitely some success scattered throughout and towards the eastern side of the horizontal east to west berm in the backyard. Very light success scattered throughout, but there is that 2 or so inch plant life in the weeds mixed throughout. There are mushrooms throughout. All of this is working towards a much healthier ecosystem, soil system, soil structure, all of it. I'm so excited. We really only have some little gnats. They're not very bothersome at all. They really stay on the weeds in the back area. And then some local hybridized wasps. Jay went out and did some research, and apparently these are hybridized wasps that are very plentiful in the Tooele area. They're very non-aggressive. They live in the ground, both in the front yard and in the backyard. They are not doing anything to anyone. They're just eating all those gnats. So that's the beginning of a functioning bug ecosystem here on this property. The gnats, being so non-aggressive, are such a nice alternative to those that we dealt with in Magna, who were very aggressive. And these stay lower. The wasps that we were dealing with in Magna, and that may come here as well as the sunflowers grow up. The folks before had a bird feeder on the rotting play yard that was in the back, and there were just years of sunflower seeds out there dug into the dirt, I'm sure. So as we put that mulch down and we've been watering it, we have probably a couple dozen sunflowers that are scattered throughout that area over there. And wasps love sunflowers. I wasn't aware of this. I'd always been around sunflowers and wasps, yes, and never seen the connection. I didn't realize that they use these sunflowers many times as places even to sleep for at least a portion of the night. So they're very aggressive around the sunflowers. Something we are going to pay attention to, see what the wasp life is like here. Probably not allow them to grow back up in the area where they are right now. We want to move them towards the back, where we're going to have the sunflowers, squash, corn, and oh my goodness, and I'm totally losing my train of thought here. Oh, beans, right? Those are the 3 sisters, the really actually 4 sisters. Sunflowers should be a part of that mix that was so common in some of the Native American cultures. Sunflowers were common throughout large portions of Native Americans, even if they didn't use the 3 sisters method. So I absolutely want to put all of that together into a little kind of a row. It won't be your traditional bare row gardening. The squash and the beans will very much fill in the ground area there. We'll probably do pole beans like you would think when they did their beans, maybe something like Anasazi beans or a different type of bean. Certainly, we'll probably do green beans. It will still have the same overall effect. We'll see if green beans do as well as a legume. They are 2 different families, I believe. Let's just double check on that really quickly, actually. And so our green beans in the same family as navy beans, we'll say. That's a good example. Or pinto beans, that's a better one. Pinto beans. Oh, okay. So I would guess that it would have similar companion plant type of effects as the more traditional three sisters variety. We may have some Anasazi beans, if I can find some of those from my home area to grow, and or some pinto beans just to experiment with it. It does take quite a bit of area to have much of anything to show for something like pinto beans or navy beans, lima beans, peas. They take a lot of area to grow enough to have something to like set aside for a winter store for family, right? They're plentiful, but they're small, and it takes a lot to fill something like we would consider a can of peas or a can of pinto beans, right? Very, very fun stuff. All right, let's see. I think it's just going to be everybody saying hello, and it is. Those are pretty much what those ideas are pretty much what we've been working on this week, continuing to try to push forward on the nonprofit. That's been a little bit rough. Megan Pater's got a lot going on in her world right now, and she's really that leading voice in that process. I can move forward without her if it just absolutely comes down to it, but I would really rather work with her as she would as well. So we are continuing to do our best to try to make that happen. And I may be going ahead and reaching out to some of the resources locally that my SBDC mentor recommended. And so we're having a little bit of a back and forth, my SBDC mentor and I right now, because generally he does not handle nonprofits. The reason that he can touch on my nonprofit is because it's in conjunction to my for-profit business, hopefully being part of the pieces that really start making this effort work. And so in that light, he gets to work with me for my nonprofit. He had recommended that I get the EIN for the nonprofit variation of Collectively Rewilding before approaching any state entity. And Megan Pater just adamantly believes in reversing that order and talking with the state. Oh, goodness. I'm not even going to go try and look. It's her material. I could certainly find it, but it would take me too long. We're at the end of class and it's too technical to worry about anyway. So it may be the state treasury department. It may be the Secretary of State. I think it's the Secretary of State. Anyway, you want to get in touch with the state agency before getting your EIN. And on the IRS website, it very clearly says, and this is where my expertise comes into play a little bit with reading comprehension. I love the written, spoken English word. I wish that I would have had more exposure to foreign languages because I think that I may have really found some fun in that. But as far as the English language goes, it's kind of one of the things that I do best. And the IRS website clearly states that you should approach the state entity for either a for-profit or a nonprofit business when you're establishing it, or it could make the EIN process more lengthy, right? It could go slower if you approach getting your EIN before approaching the state entity, which is how I did initially go for both quick draw editing services, which was my initial new business effort after doing a couple of daycares, right? And then Collectively Rewilding came of what I realized I wasn't wanting to edit. I wanted to play in the garden. And so Collectively Rewilding was born, and I did register for an EIN before I registered with a state entity. That's not the case. And so we had a little bit of a back and forth, and I had just finally been like, let's just agree to disagree. And he looked at it a little further. I think maybe he is seeing what I'm seeing now. And we were being given information that wasn't accurate on his side and on my side in registering first with that EIN. So for anybody watching this, for-profit or nonprofit, and I'll just show you exactly what that is so nobody is in any doubt. I have it pulled up here because I went over it a multitude of times. And when it comes down to what we're talking about here, you want to, oh goodness, and now I'm not finding it because I'm talking. Okay, I think it's right here. If you are forming a legal entity, an LLC, a limited liability company, corporation, whatever, a partnership, a corporation, or tax-exempt organization, such as a nonprofit, form your entity through your state before you apply for an EIN. So I may not understand the ins and outs of nonprofit, and Jess Clifford certainly knows more about establishing and maintaining businesses than I do. English language, though, that's what it says. Get your state entity situation handled first. And so you form your entity through your state. Then you would click this link and go to your state to follow through on that end first, right? So that was a lot of fun. He did look over it. Not a lot of fun, really, but fun, not a lot of fun. He did look over it and agree in the end that that is what that had been saying, and that he had been given misinformation. I'm guessing in regards to even for-profit businesses is how he might have meant it. I haven't torn into his email, and we will be meeting this coming week. So we'll see what that ends up fully being, but that is what the language on the IRS website says. So guys, if you're starting a business, if you're starting a nonprofit, if you want to get an EIN, go through your state, then get your EIN. All right? All right, let's check out our next class, which will be Miss Tammy's Tea and Talk with Tammy. And that is going to be this Saturday at 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 1 o'clock p.m. Mountain, 2 o'clock p.m. Central, and 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern. I hope you are all able to join in with us, and you will be with me again this Monday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Mountain, 8:30 p.m. Central, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, let me make sure there was nothing in the chat. There's 3 more things in there, I think, still. Are there any beneficial weeds I should leave alone? That's very interesting, Benny. Thank you for asking. I have pulled up some articles about that specifically, at least 1 or 2, I'm pretty sure. So I'll try to find that material and get it in there for you. I have so many articles pulled up that I'll never be able to read them all. I'll try to find those that specifically were about weeds that you should not remove from your yard. I'm really interested in it too. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. So thank you for that nice little question to cap off our session tonight, Benny. Thank you all, Benny, Vanessa, Anita. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Please feel free to unmute yourselves and say goodnight. I apologize. I just saw that there was more there, Vanessa.
Thanks. Good night.
Hi, guys.
Night.
Bye. Thank you all.